Late at night, the streets were quiet, almost eerily so, as the girl walked alone, her small bag clutched tightly in her hands, the only thing she had left in the world. The lamps flickered faintly above, casting pools of dim light on the empty sidewalks. But the glow did little to warm the chill that ran through her bones. Every step echoed against the brick walls of abandoned shops and shuttered windows, a lonely rhythm that matched the hollow ache in her chest. She had lost her job weeks ago, the notice coming suddenly, like a blow that knocked the ground from under her feet, leaving her without purpose or direction. Her home, once a safe place, filled with memories of comfort and laughter, had slipped away too, and now even the walls she had leaned on for support felt like strangers. Her friends, those she had trusted and leaned on in smaller troubles, had slowly drifted away, busy with their own lives, leaving her to navigate the shadows of the city on her own. She felt invisible, as if the world had turned its gaze and decided she no longer mattered, as if her presence had become nothing more than a whisper in a vast, uncaring silence. Every passing car seemed like a reminder of how distant everyone was, its headlights briefly illuminating her path before disappearing into the night, leaving her once again in darkness. She wondered if anyone would ever notice her again, if anyone would ever care enough to reach out, to ask how she was doing, or to simply offer a moment of warmth in the cold emptiness surrounding her. Her stomach knotted, not just from hunger, but from the gnawing fear that perhaps she had been forgotten entirely, that she had been erased from the lives of those who had once mattered, and that the future might hold only more nights like this, silent, endless, and lonely. She tried to hold back the tears, pressing the straps of her bag closer to her chest, but the effort felt useless. The city itself seemed to breathe around her. The distant hum of streetlights, the whisper of wind through empty alleys, and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze, all combining into a soundtrack of isolation. Yet somewhere deep inside, despite the fear and despair, a tiny spark of hope remained, fragile but persistent, whispering that perhaps someone might appear, might break the endless night with a moment of kindness, might remind her that she was not truly invisible. Step by step, she moved forward, the weight of loss heavy on her shoulders, yet her feet carried her onward, through the shadows, through the silence, toward a future she could not yet see, but one that might, just might, hold a light strong enough to reach her heart. The girl wandered through the streets, until she reached a small park at the edge of town, the only place where she could sit without being hurried away or pushed aside. Her legs were aching from hours of walking, her stomach knotted with hunger, and her hands shook slightly as she lowered herself onto the last empty bench, the cold wood pressing uncomfortably against her back. Around her, the park was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. People passed by, wrapped in their own worlds, hurrying to get somewhere, talking on phones or laughing with companions. But none of them noticed her. She tried to shrink into herself, wishing she could disappear entirely, feeling the weight of despair pressing down as heavily as the night air. Her bag, her only possession, rested on her lap, and she ran a trembling hand over it, wondering if it even mattered anymore. If anything she carried could help her survive another day. The darkness of the park seemed endless, stretching around her like a thick blanket of loneliness. And for a moment, she allowed herself to think that perhaps she would sit there forever, invisible, forgotten, without food, without hope, without a single soul to care. Then, just as the hopelessness threatened to consume her completely, a shadow fell across the bench. She looked up, startled, her heart beating faster, unsure if it was a threat or just another passerby. But there was something different about this presence. The figure stopped, not far from her, yet close enough that she could feel the calm warmth radiating from it, as if it had a steady pulse that contrasted with the chaos and cold of the night. The stranger did not rush or demand, did not speak at first, simply stood and waited, giving her a chance to notice, to breathe, to hope. There was no judgment in the way they watched her, only a gentle curiosity that somehow made her feel seen. Like someone had finally recognized her existence after hours of being ignored. The park, once oppressive and empty, now held a new tension, a quiet suspense, as if the air itself waited to see what would happen next. Her stomach tightened, but now for a different reason: anxiety, mixed with a fragile flicker of hope. Could this stranger be real? Could someone care enough to stay, even for a moment, when everyone else had passed by? She dared to look closer, searching for a clue, some sign that this was not a trick of her tired mind, or a fleeting illusion born from her desperate longing for kindness. And in that instant, the bench, the park, and the empty streets beyond faded into the background, leaving only the girl and the stranger, two figures in the night, connected by a silent, unspoken question. Would this presence bring fear, or would it bring the hope she had almost stopped believing in? Step by cautious step, she waited, her heart trembling, knowing that the answer could change everything. The stranger crouched slightly, maintaining a gentle distance, and in a voice soft enough to blend with the rustling leaves, asked if she was okay. The girl's body stiffened, and her heart thumped painfully in her chest. For a long moment, she said nothing, her eyes fixed on the worn wooden slats of the bench, as if the texture of the wood could shield her from the world. Shame coiled tightly in her stomach, twisting every thought into silence. She had felt invisible for so long, abandoned by everyone who had once been near, and now here was someone looking at her, expecting she did not know what end. The weight of that expectation pressed down even harder than hunger or cold. Her fingers twisted in the strap of her bag, knuckles white, and she inhaled shakily, afraid that even a word might betray the weakness she felt crawling through her like icy fingers. Yet the stranger did not rush, did not glare, did not look away. Instead, they simply waited, their presence steady, warm, and patient, as if giving her permission to exist even in her broken state. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she let her voice escape in a whisper so faint it seemed swallowed by the night itself. I have nothing left," she admitted, the words tasting bitter and heavy as they passed her lips. The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and trembling. A truth she had carried silently through long nights and empty streets. To her surprise, the stranger did not recoil or look away. They simply smiled with a softness that made the girl's chest ache. A smile that said, without words, that her honesty was not a burden, that her pain did not drive them away. Without hesitation, the stranger lowered themselves onto the bench beside her, close enough to share the space but careful not to crowd it, offering comfort in a way that had no judgment, no pity, only quiet acceptance. The warmth of their presence seeped into her, subtle but undeniable, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through an overcast morning. Her eyes welled with tears she had fought to hold back, but she did not move to hide them. Instead, she let them slide down her cheeks, and the stranger did not flinch or speak over them. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt seen not as someone to be ignored or pitied, but as a human being worthy of attention and care. The night around them seemed to soften, the sounds of distant traffic and whispering wind fading into the background, leaving only the two of them on the bench, a small island of safety and understanding. Suspense lingered, a quiet tension in the air, not of fear but of the fragile possibility that this moment, simple as it seemed, could mark the start of something that might change her life entirely. In that long, silent pause, with the stranger beside her and the confession spoken aloud for the first time, the girl realized that maybe, just maybe, hope was no longer impossible to touch. The stranger rose from the park bench with a gentle hand gesture, motioning for the girl to follow, and together they walked through the quiet streets, toward a small cafe tucked into a corner of the neighborhood, its warm lights glowing softly against the night. Each step felt heavy to her, not just from exhaustion, but from the unfamiliarity, of being guided by someone who did not judge or demand anything in return. When they reached the cafe, the stranger held the door open with a quiet patience, and she hesitated for a moment, unsure if she even deserved a place inside, unsure if anyone truly cared about her well-being. But the inviting warmth of the cafe, mingling with the calm presence of the stranger, drew her in, and she allowed herself to step across the threshold. The air smelled of bread, coffee, and something comforting that reminded her of times long past when life had felt safer, brighter, and simpler. The stranger led her to a small table near the window, far enough from other customers to allow privacy, but close enough that the soft hum of quiet conversation reminded her she was not alone. A waitress approached, and the stranger quietly ordered a simple meal: warm soup, bread, and tea, nothing extravagant, yet everything her body and soul had been craving. She sat there, staring down at the steaming bowl, hesitant to touch it at first, as if the act of eating after days of hunger would make it all feel unreal. The stranger smiled softly, reassuring her without words, and finally, with a trembling hand, she brought the spoon to her lips. The warmth of the soup surprised her, spreading through her body, easing the gnawing ache in her stomach, and somehow reaching the emptiness that had settled in her chest. Tears began to fall, silent at first, then more freely, tracing paths down her cheeks, and she felt the sting of long-suppressed emotions rising with every bite. The stranger did not speak over her, or offer empty words of comfort. Instead, they simply placed a gentle hand near hers on the table, a silent reminder that it was okay to feel, to release, to let the pain surface in order to heal. The girl felt a strange combination of relief and vulnerability, realizing that she could allow herself to experience emotion without fear of judgment. Around them, the cafe continued, its quiet rhythm, the clink of cups, the low murmur of conversation, but she barely noticed, absorbed entirely in the moment, in the sense of safety and care that surrounded her. Each bite of food became more than sustenance. It became a symbol of hope, a small act of kindness that proved to her that life could still hold moments of goodness, even after so much loss. And in that warm, quiet cafe, with tears falling freely, and the stranger sitting patiently beside her, she understood, perhaps for the first time in many weeks, that healing did not arrive all at once. It began in small, tender gestures, in the simplest acts of compassion, and that even in the darkest nights, light could return, softly but surely, into her life. After the warm meal, the stranger leaned back slightly in her chair and spoke softly, suggesting that the girl come with her for the night, offering a place to sleep where she could finally rest safely. The girl's heart tightened at the idea, a mixture of relief and fear twisting inside her. She had been alone for so long, wandering the streets without a roof over her head, that the thought of being cared for by another human felt both miraculous and unsettling. I don't want to be a burden," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the quiet hum of the cafe. The stranger simply smiled, a gentle, knowing smile, and insisted with a calm patience that left no room for doubt or argument. "It's okay. You need rest. You deserve it," the stranger said, her tone warm and steady, carrying the weight of reassurance without pressure or expectation. Slowly, hesitantly, the girl nodded, rising from the table, her legs stiff but moving forward with the stranger's guidance. They walked through the quiet streets, the city lights casting soft glows on the pavement, and though the night was cool and still, a strange sense of safety began to settle over her with each step beside the stranger. When they arrived at a small, cozy home, tucked into a quiet neighborhood, the stranger led her inside. The interior, modest but clean and welcoming, with the faint scent of lavender and warmth in the air. She showed her a simple guest room, the bed neatly made with soft blankets, the window slightly open to let in the gentle night breeze. The girl hesitated at the doorway, feeling the old fears of intrusion and inadequacy creep back into her mind, but the stranger's quiet presence, just a step behind, reminded her again that she was not alone. Tentatively, she stepped into the room, setting her bag on a chair by the bed, and slowly allowed herself to breathe, the tension in her shoulders beginning to ease for the first time in what felt like forever. She climbed onto the bed, feeling the softness of the blankets against her skin, and let herself sink into the comfort that had been missing for so long. The stranger nodded once, giving her space, and left the door slightly ajar, a silent promise of protection and care. As she lay there, the girl felt the weight of exhaustion, fear, and loneliness lift slightly, replaced by a fragile sense of peace. Her eyelids grew heavy, the rhythm of her heartbeat slowing, and the shadows of worry that had haunted her finally began to recede. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to drift fully into sleep, uninterrupted and unafraid, the quiet room holding her gently, as if the world outside could not reach her here. And in that moment, surrounded by calm and warmth, she realized that sometimes the simplest acts, offering a bed, providing safety, sharing a quiet presence, could begin to heal the deepest wounds, giving her the strength to face tomorrow, and the faintest spark of hope that her life might yet be rebuilt. The next morning, sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, painting the small room with a warm, golden glow, and for the first time in days, the girl awoke feeling a quiet sense of safety rather than panic or emptiness. She stretched slowly, her muscles stiff from weeks of wandering, and noticed the stranger already seated at the small kitchen table, a calm cup of tea in hand, waiting patiently without pressure or expectation. The stranger's eyes held a quiet kindness, an unspoken invitation to speak, and after a few moments of silence, she encouraged the girl softly, "Would you like to tell me your story? Or even your dreams?" The question startled her at first. It had been so long since anyone had asked, so long since anyone had cared enough to listen without judgment. Her throat tightened, memories of hardship, loss, and loneliness threatening to choke the words she struggled to form. Yet the stranger did not rush her, did not look away, did not interrupt the trembling hesitations. Slowly, cautiously, she began to speak, each word carrying the weight of nights spent hungry and alone, of doors closed in her face, of friends and family she had thought she could rely on, who had disappeared when life became difficult. As she spoke, her voice quivered, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. But the stranger remained patient, nodding gently, offering quiet acknowledgement, and giving her the courage to continue. Then, almost naturally, the story shifted, as if the act of being heard allowed her to breathe again, and she began to share small dreams she had almost forgotten, dreams of a stable job, of contributing to the world, of a life where she could feel worthy again. The stranger smiled softly, a warmth in her eyes that reassured her that none of this was too much, that her past struggles did not define who she could become. "Your story doesn't have to hold you back," the stranger said gently, leaning forward slightly. "It can guide you, remind you of your strength, and help others see the courage you carry." The girl's heart lifted, a spark of hope igniting, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the possibility that she might rebuild her life. The stranger then extended another gesture of support, offering to connect her with a friend who was looking for help at a local business, someone who would see her value, not her past. The girl's eyes widened, a mixture of relief and cautious excitement, and she realized that this simple act of guidance could open doors she had thought permanently closed. As the morning light grew stronger, she felt a new determination stir inside her, strengthened by the patience, empathy, and encouragement she had been shown in that quiet kitchen, over the steam of a simple cup of tea. The girl understood that sharing her story and her dreams was not a weakness, but a step toward reclaiming her life, and that with the support of someone who believed in her. The path forward, though uncertain, suddenly felt possible, the promise of connection, understanding, an opportunity wrapped around her like a gentle warmth, and she knew that from this moment, things could begin to change in ways she had only dared to imagine in the quiet of her heart. The girl walked up to the small bookstore on a quiet street, her heart pounding in her chest, a mixture of nervousness and fragile hope twisting in her stomach. The morning sunlight glinted off the glass windows, and she paused for a moment outside, taking a deep breath as if to gather courage for a step. She had not taken in a long time, trusting that someone might believe in her again. The bell above the door jingled softly as she pushed it open, and the warm scent of paper, ink, and polished wood washed over her, comforting in a way she had almost forgotten. Behind the counter stood the owner, a kind-looking person with gentle eyes and a welcoming smile, who looked up from arranging books and nodded as though expecting her arrival. "Good morning," the owner said, voice calm and friendly, and the girl's hands tightened around the strap of her bag, suddenly self-conscious, unsure what to say or how to begin. She hesitated, the memories of rejection and loss threatening to overwhelm her courage. But the stranger's earlier encouragement echoed in her mind, reminding her that her past did not define her. Slowly, she explained that she was looking for work, her voice soft, slightly trembling, but determined to be honest about her situation. The owner listened attentively, without judgment or interruption, and when she finished, they smiled again, a warmth that reached her heart and eased the tension in her chest. "I think we can use someone like you," the owner said, and the words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating a path she had thought forever blocked. Relief and gratitude flooded through her, almost overwhelming, and she nodded, unable to speak for a moment, tears threatening to spill again. The owner led her through the aisles, showing her where she could help with organizing books, assisting customers, and managing small tasks. And for the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of purpose ignite within her. The friendly faces of a few regular customers passing by added to the sense of normalcy and community she had longed for, and the hushed rustle of pages and soft footsteps created a rhythm that calmed her anxious mind. As she began her first task, placing books carefully on shelves, she felt a quiet pride growing inside her, a feeling she had almost forgotten, capable, trusted, and needed. Each interaction, each small accomplishment, reinforced the fragile hope that life could indeed be rebuilt, piece by piece. The nervousness that had weighed heavily on her earlier slowly transformed into confidence, strengthened by the kindness and trust extended to her. For the first time in a long while, she could imagine a future where she was not invisible, where her actions mattered, and where she had a place in the world. The bookstore, with its towering shelves, welcoming owner, and soft ambient light, became more than a workplace. It became a sanctuary, a symbol that even after loss, despair, and loneliness, new opportunities could appear in the most unexpected places. Surrounded by books and kind faces, the girl felt her heart lighten, understanding that rebuilding her life would not be instant. But step by step, she was beginning to reclaim her confidence, her hope, and her place in the world, one small act at a time. As the days passed at the bookstore, the girl began to feel a rhythm to her life that had been absent for so long, a quiet routine that brought a sense of safety and purpose she had not known in weeks. Each morning she arrived, arranging books carefully on the shelves, greeting the few regular customers with a tentative smile, and feeling the small satisfaction of a task completed well. At first, she kept her distance, wary of opening up too much, her past experiences of disappointment and abandonment making her hesitant to trust anyone fully. But slowly, the warmth of the bookstore and the gentle presence of the owner began to break through the walls she had built around herself. She started exchanging small conversations with customers, helping them find books, recommending stories she loved, and noticing the grateful smiles that came in return. Each interaction, though simple, felt like a thread weaving her back into the fabric of human connection. When a young boy asked her to read a passage from a story he liked, she laughed quietly, the sound foreign but delightful in her own ears, and felt a lightness she had not felt in months. A regular customer shared a memory from their childhood that made her chuckle, and for the first time in a long while, she realized she could enjoy moments without fear or suspicion. Even the briefest acknowledgments, nod, a smile, a polite thank you built her confidence, layer by layer, and she began to believe that people could be kind, that not everyone would turn away when she needed support. Trust, which had once felt impossible, started to grow quietly in her heart, like a small, stubborn plant pushing through cracks in concrete. She discovered that she could rely on others again, that there were people willing to listen, to care, to notice her presence without judgment or expectation. The routine of her work, the smiles of customers, and the gentle guidance of the bookstore owner all combined to create a sense of stability she had not experienced since before her hardships began. Slowly, she allowed herself to laugh more freely, to share small parts of her own story when asked, and to connect with those around her in a way that felt genuine and safe. Each day ended with a feeling of quiet accomplishment, a subtle but powerful reminder that she was capable of rebuilding her life. Not alone, but with the support and kindness of others. Even simple gestures, a shared joke, a moment of conversation, a customer returning to the store became proof that her trust was not misplaced. And as the weeks passed, she began to carry herself differently, more assured, more open to the possibilities of human connection, realizing that life could hold joy again, even after loss, pain, and loneliness. In the gentle rhythm of the bookstore, surrounded by books, laughter, and friendly faces, she began to understand that trust, once broken, could be restored, and that through patience, empathy, and small, daily moments, she could learn to believe in people again, and perhaps in herself. As the days grew brighter with her newfound confidence, the girl began to notice the world around her in a way she hadn't before, seeing the small struggles and quiet needs of the people near her, and realizing that even tiny gestures could make a meaningful difference. Inspired by the kindness that had been shown to her, she started to give back in small, thoughtful ways, discovering a deep satisfaction in acts that required nothing grand but offered comfort and care. She helped a neighbor carry groceries up a narrow staircase, the simple exchange of a smile and a thank you filling her with warmth she hadn't felt in months. On weekends, she began volunteering at a local shelter, offering her time to sort donations and speak gently to those who had no one to talk to. Each interaction reminding her that human connection could heal not only others, but herself as well. She listened to people with patience, letting them share their worries and stories without interrupting, understanding now how powerful it could be just to be heard. And she realized that empathy was a gift she could offer freely. Sometimes, she gave away a warm cup of tea or a piece of bread to someone hungry, remembering how the simple kindness of a stranger had shifted her own life. And in doing so, she felt the cycle of compassion beginning to turn, like ripples in water spreading outward in ways she could not fully see, but could deeply sense. Even small words of encouragement to a friend or a coworker lifted her spirits, and she found herself smiling more easily, her laughter becoming a quiet thread of hope in the lives she touched. She also discovered that giving back was not always about grand gestures or public recognition. Often, it was the quiet, unnoticed moments that mattered most, the reassurance offered with a gentle tone, the patient attention given to someone struggling, the small favors done without expectation of reward. Each time she helped someone, she felt her own heart grow lighter, her sense of purpose strengthening, and the fear and loneliness that had once defined her days faded a little more. She began to notice patterns, the way kindness inspired kindness, how even a single act could ripple outward, touching more lives than she could imagine, and how sharing compassion created connections that went beyond immediate gestures to form a community built on trust and care. Her life, once shadowed by despair, was now becoming intertwined with the lives of others in a way that made each day meaningful and full of possibility. And as she continued to give back, she realized that the smallest acts, listening, helping, sharing, were capable of creating profound changes, that her own experiences of suffering had made her uniquely able to empathize and reach out, and that by multiplying the kindness she had received, she was contributing to a world where hope could take root even in the hardest hearts, showing her that the true power of compassion was not just in being helped, but in helping others to rise, just as she had been lifted. Weeks later, the girl stood in her small but warm apartment, looking around at the space she now called her own, a place that felt safe, welcoming, and filled with quiet promise. The walls were adorned with a few simple decorations she had gathered, books neatly stacked on shelves, and sunlight streamed through the window, spilling over the modest furnishings and giving the room a soft glow that felt almost magical. After months of darkness and uncertainty, she took a deep breath, letting the familiar scent of fresh linens and faint traces of her favorite teas remind her of how far she had come. And in that moment, memories of the nights spent alone on cold streets and benches returned with a sharp clarity, a reminder of the depth of despair she had once known. Yet instead of feeling defeated, she allowed herself to feel gratitude for the stranger who had changed her life with a single act of kindness, who had offered her a meal, a safe place to sleep, and the patient listening ear that had begun to mend the broken threads of her spirit. She reflected on the journey she had taken from fear and hopelessness to trust and connection, from silent suffering to moments of laughter, shared stories, and the satisfaction of helping others, and realized that every small step, every moment of courage to accept support and to reach out, had contributed to the life she now lived. She thought of the people she had encountered along the way, the bookstore owner who had given her a chance, the neighbors she had assisted, the friends she had slowly allowed herself to make, and the countless small gestures that had reminded her that humanity, at its best, had the power to lift others from despair. Her heart swelled with a quiet determination to pass that kindness forward, to offer what she had received to someone else in need, knowing that even the smallest act could set off a ripple effect, capable of changing a life as profoundly as her own had been changed. Sitting at her small kitchen table, sipping tea, she smiled at the thought of the days ahead, imagining moments where she could help, listen, and bring warmth to others, aware now that hope was not fragile, but resilient, capable of surviving even the darkest nights, if nurtured with care and compassion. She realized that life, though unpredictable and sometimes cruel, could also be beautiful, and that human connection, the simple act of noticing another, of offering support without expectation, was the most powerful force she had ever known. In that quiet apartment, surrounded by the small comforts she had earned through perseverance, patience, and the generosity of strangers, she felt a sense of completeness she had thought impossible, a feeling that life could indeed be rewritten, not erased, but rebuilt with care, empathy, and hope. And as she looked out the window at the world beyond, she promised herself that she would continue to carry forward the light she had been given, to nurture it in others, and to live a life shaped not by despair, but by the enduring, transformative power of kindness, proving that one compassionate gesture could indeed change everything.